Hey everybody, welcome to EDL 854, Building Finance. This is our case study, The Budget Debacle. My name is Jeff Edwards, and I am the principal at USD 223 Lynn Schools. In section 1, we'll look to summarize the case. So what's going on here? I said in an effort to raise money for Briardale Elementary, a raffle for cash event was implemented and all raffle tickets were successfully sold. But on the night of the drawing, the sheriff, tipped off by a community member with insider information, arrested the foundation president. He was convicted of a misdemeanor and placed on probation for his role in the raffle for cash event. Where did this take place? This was Briar Elementary, which is one of 6 elementary schools in the center of town. It's an urban or a suburban area with diverse community, and this is happening during the planning of meetings. It's happening at a school during a raffle meeting, and the school is often used for meetings and other community events. Who's involved? There's myself, Principal Santos, Mr. Barely, the foundation president, Briardale Foundation themselves, students, parents, staff, and community members. So the problem arises when Principal Santos was overconfident in his ability to manage the school's financial decisions. He failed to provide guidance or warnings regarding foreseeable hazards. Mr. Barely was allowed to work through the raffle fundraiser without consulting anyone with knowledge of law or policy. The goal was to raise funds for programs that appeared to be receiving adequate funding already, and personal competition became an issue with Mr. Barely's Harvard classmate, who was also working the same position in another school. Also, state laws were not investigated before the raffle. Section 2, what are the legal and ethical issues in this case? The legal issues would be negligence, failure to follow the established protocol, which was not made aware to Mr. Barely, failure to research and follow state and local laws. It's important to know that most states have legislation that governs raffles, and they did not file an application for this fundraiser, and raffles typically are not tax exempt. Some of the ethical issues are the competitive nature of fundraising can cause issues. This is also true when your classmate is fundraising and you had a little personal vendetta against him from college days. The person who turned in Mr. Barely could have had a personal agenda against him or the school district, and the personal focus for funding could be centered around parents in this instance instead of the kids, which is what it should be. Section 3, what's exactly happening? I said Mr. Barely and the Briardale Elementary Foundation, a parent-run organization, utilized a raffle for cash fundraiser, but the foundation president was convicted of a misdemeanor for his involvement and failure to follow laws, and Briardale Elementary was left with an occurrence which caused negative publicity and public shame to the school. Section 4, synthesize the information and also what information might be missing. So the known facts, the people, Mr. Santos or myself, Mr. Barely, and Mr. Morley, which was the Harvard classmate of Mr. Barely. The places we know about, Briardale Elementary, it serves as the community meeting center. It's a well-maintained facility of a K-5 school, has a good reputation in a diverse community. And the programs we know about is, we know that it's a K-5 public school. The basic skill curriculum is funded through the district. The foundation funds our supplementary programs, and there's been a new initiative for innovative programs, and they're looking for some additional funding. Some missing information. The Briardale Foundation members specifically, the school staff that might be involved, the parents or community members involved, and community stakeholders that this could affect. Places we don't really know about, which state was this happening in, and what are their possible laws with raffle in regards to raffle for funds, the school and community demographics specifically, even though we know it's a diverse community. Also the programs that we don't know about, the specific curriculum used, and what specifically this money was being used for. What are the innovative programs that they had in mind? So section 5, we're going to put all of our key information together, review, and prioritize. So some of our key information that we have, some of the questions that we have, could the situation be damaging to the stakeholders or the community? Well, most definitely, this occurrence could have a ripple effect for future funding efforts, and the people that have been putting forth a lot of effort in the past might be upset. What individuals, groups had an important stake in the outcome? Well, the foundation definitely is going to be affected early on, and the future of the foundation could have an impact on the students' future success and well-being, which you want to avoid that. Have all relevant stakeholders been consulted? No. At this point, the district superintendent, local board of education have not been involved yet, and not a ton of the community has been involved yet either, actually. Can I learn more about the situation? Yeah, there's questions that we could ask about the funding of the program outside of the core curriculum. We could also learn about what policies the school had in place that Mr. Santos, myself, failed to notice or to be able to pass on to Mr. Barely. Do I know enough to make a decision yet? I would say not yet, but there's enough information to start thinking things through. Continuing here, should the foundation be chaired by parents or school employees? According to what we were reading, parents or community members should chair the foundation if possible. The school can accept donations but avoid liability by staying out of the decision-making process. How could this be avoided, and what measures should be taken to ensure that parents comply with the law when conducting fundraisers? The foundation parents should be provided with the necessary guidance of the laws governing fundraising from the local Board of Education and State Department of Ed. Also, it's my job, too, as a principal, that I need to be aware of these practices and also be able to convey my message to the president himself so he doesn't get into a situation like this. Whose responsibility is it to ensure accountability? It's the president of the foundation's responsibility, but it's also my responsibility to help communicate our policies and maybe help him to understand what the laws might be in terms of his fundraising plans. Who's in charge of auditing funds? Once the funds are donated to the school, the bookkeeper or treasurer should audit funds with the supervisor of the building principal. And what other resources are available to a school outside of a budgeted allocations? Advertising is possible, donations and charitable contributions, and crowdfunding is another option to raise funds for the school. Section 6, the options and possible consequences. We're going to identify our options and possible consequences here. So 3 of the key options we have is 1, let the chips fall as it is and do nothing, take no responsibility. Option 2 is drastic change. Look to make immediate and drastic changes such as removing Mr. Barely from his role, possibly disband the foundation altogether. And option 3 is more of the intermediate approach. You admit fault and apologize as a school, consult your Board of Education and superintendent and talk them through what's going on. Redefine policies and procedures for fundraising. You would provide adequate guidance for education of our foundation. And then you would also, have the option to contact the state or investigate alternative funding sources. Section 7, the pros and cons of our plan here. The pros and cons of option 1, do nothing, is the pros are the principal avoids being in the middle of the investigation, and the school pretty much avoids possible litigation because the fault lies with Mr. Barely and the foundation. Now, the do nothing cons is that they fail to promote a collaborative effort with all stakeholders, and they're passing the blame on others, and that could be frowned upon. It also fails to support and inspire the staff that might be surrounding there, and it also fails to promote academic success and well-being of those that are involved. Option 2, your drastic change pros and cons. The pros to that is the blame falls once again on the president and foundation and not on the school. But the cons as you look at is you may lose the support from the foundation, which provides a lot of good things and provides funding for the students. Also, future outside funding may be jeopardized, which will affect the future. And student success and well-being is negatively affected. And then option 3, the intermediate plan pros and cons. I think one of the main pros is that all stakeholders are finally consulted. Proper directives can be commonly agreed upon with integrity maintained. The future of fundraising will be properly guided and the programs will be properly funded. And this promotes the current and future success and well-being of everyone involved. Option 3's cons would be the principal must admit fault when original procedures and guidelines were not followed, and there could be a reprimand coming from the superintendent, which, as the principal that messed up, I would be welcoming to that because, we obviously put our school in a position. So as we take a look at Section 8, choosing the best option, obviously the best option for me would be option 3. I feel that it's important that you kind of involve everybody, you admit some faults, and then you kind of make a plan for the future that's going to benefit the foundation and all of the students and community in Briardale. So Section 9, implementation of my plan. So the implementation of my plan would be to first take responsibility, issue a public apology, and own up to the fact that we messed up. Okay. Next, I would talk with all stakeholders, including Mr. Barely, the Board of Education, Superintendent, Curriculum Committee, and others. Take a look at the current practices and policies and propose change to the fundraising efforts, both practices and how the funds are being used. Next, we need to prepare to act. If the Board of Education and Superintendent agree, a committee should be formed to examine and revise the current fundraising policies and practices. We need to identify key stakeholders for a committee, which could be teachers, students, community members, building district team admin, and even legal counsel. The committee should meet regularly and make data-driven decisions. Next, we need to propose change. The proposed change should be based on research with the committee and supported by all stakeholders. Change should lead to the success and well-being of all involved. Next, we should communicate the change with our stakeholders. All staff, foundation members, community members, site curriculum committees, and everyone else needs to know about these changes that are being made so that everybody can follow the same path. And finally, we need to implement the plan. Students and classrooms would benefit from the school-funded curriculum of an implemented plan that everyone was following. Additional funds could be raised for extracurricular activities through this plan, and the foundation would no longer be the sole provider of funds for our supplemental program, which is very important. So what do we do if this doesn't work? If our new policy fails to work, I would explore other sources of funding. And I mentioned earlier in my presentation that local advertising is a possibility. Donations and charitable contributions is possible. And also crowdfunding, which is a way to reach a lot of different people. And there's a lot of people that are using the crowdfunding for their fundraising efforts. So Section 10, the program standard integration, the conclusion. I said that in reflection of this case study, my future actions and decisions were impacted because this activity simulated real-life situations and also emphasized the importance of having specific policies and procedures to follow when working with funding. Throughout this course, I've been working through my first few months as a building leader myself, and many of these topics have been covered in my daily practices. It's my responsibility to both understand policy laws and to be able to communicate with my staff and community members when dealing with finances for my school. My decisions should be based on data-informed evidence, and they should align with our school improvement plan and student development. In this particular case study, a proactive approach to Mr. Barely with specific policies and guidelines would have changed the outcome for the school in the district, as he would have known the local and state laws concerning raffle funding. I think it's important to be able to speak to the community and anybody that's working through the school, because anytime that money is involved, as has been stated earlier, trust is a great thing, but too much trust can lead to issues. And in this case, I think that Mr. Barely was trusted too much with his knowledge of fundraising activities, and it ended up costing the district. So here's a look at my references, and I thank you very much for taking the time to check out my presentation. Take care.